I really actually hated to interrupt any of these conversations around the room because this is exactly where we wanted to be at the end of this weekend. Have all of you buzzing with ideas. We have traversed a lot of terrain, a shocking amount of terrain, actually, over the last few days, from those the rudiments of brain science. I have those Chuck Nelson's pictures of neurons still burned into my brain, through the family stuff and the economics, and leading all the way up through the data and so on that we heard today. And I know a lot kicking around in my head, and from the conversations, clearly a lot in yours. I think what I'd like to do is just go around the room and have, if each of you could say one thing that's on your mind, one thing you're thinking about, or one thing that you're taking away that's new to you from this last 4 days. And it can be big or small, whatever, but something that you're taking away as we go out in the world, or it can be an idea, something you're going to do differently, or a piece of data that's particularly in your mind, whatever it is. And I guess, Irene, I'm looking at you. I'll start with you. Yeah, take a mic and pad, then pass it some way.
So we were actually having a couple of chats, and I thought that it would be great if there were topics that a bunch of us are interested in, to try and promote some kind of cross-country collaboration, because I think that the network that we have here is super interesting. So Dinah was saying the other day, women's prisons and what happens to kids that are born in prisons or in countries where they cannot be with their mothers, etc. It'd be fascinating to see what happens across countries. I'm particularly interested in that subject, but if there's anyone else interested in other subjects, etc., I think it could be interesting to kind of do, just here we got 19 countries, that's a fascinating piece, just even with 15 countries on board, or 10, Okay. So that's on my mind.
Cool. We're just, for latecomers, we are just going around the room saying one thing that's on our minds as we leave here today. Go.
So I've been covering the economic crisis in Greece and the refugee crisis for a few years now, and I'm always looking for new angles. And this is a new angle, many new angles actually. Plus, just how we cannot we have to try and understand people's behaviors, how people were influenced when they were infants, and how their later actions can be translated. I don't know if I explained it correctly.
Yep. Excellent. That's great. Aaron, go for it. You're part of the team. Go ahead.
No, Hi. One thing that I think I took away from here is to look at things that have been happening in my country and actually put a fresh perspective to it. I never thought about having a child care system, child protective services, or, look at how green space or a community space affects the development of the child. Never thought of it because we're used to what we see around. But it was great to meet people from across the world and discuss how it is in their country and what we can do to improve things in ours. So that was great.
What I take away is that it's always possible to tell a story through the eyes of children. It's just a matter of changing perspective, and I think it's a really important takeaway from that workshop. And the other takeaway is that it's also possible to inject some ECD in every bit, even though it might sound challenging when you're facing your editor. There are always some tricks you can use to convince them.
So I just really loved hearing John and Lynn speak about speaking with children, and I'm always sort of trying to think of, what are the voices that are being left out of this story, And so both hearing just the very simple idea of including children's voices in our work, but then also like how to access those voices in a way that is very true and really gets at like, sort of like what's going on with them, I think is just really fantastic.
I think my take home is really similar. I think being a policy reporter, it's quite hard to get really close to what's happening. And I think I've been inspired to hear not only John, but various people, the way that they've interviewed kids and brought across these stories. I think that's something I really, really want to focus on, about getting in and interviewing children and families and getting a more, I think, a richer story as a result of that.
I told you earlier to Jack, that I'm leaving with more questions than answers. But then I think all those questions are gonna make me move forward, especially on how to implement all of those wonderful things that I learned here in the last 4 days. And well, I'm excited to see how it will turn out.
I write so much about the environment and science that I'm excited to just sort of incorporate what I've learned here into what I have been covering. That what Chuck was talking about with the effect of neglect on the brain just was just very surprising to me. So things like that will be great for me to.
Yeah, so I've made documentaries with children, but adverse childhood experiences and all of that like skipped me. And now that I go back, I'll have a very narrower focus. And I think the image that stayed with me was how the child's brain, when it's experiencing a lot of adversity, how badly networked it is. So I would, now when I go back, I'm gonna figure out how I'm gonna tell that story effectively. So.
The biggest thing on my mind is how to convince the magazine that I write for to spend a lot more time and money on this. And I don't know the answer to that, but.
Excellent.
For me, I've been doing stories related to ECD over the last 1 year, but what struck me today and what I've been trying to do over the last few months is to learn how to do solutions journalism. And I'm so happy today that I was able to interact with the speaker in the morning, and also with the help of some of the attendees like Lisa. I was able to see how I can actually compare a situation home with a country that has actually done or implemented a certain policy or a change to solve a certain problem. So I think I'll be doing that a lot, and I'm grateful for that.
Okay, for me, as my country is in a humanitarian crisis right now, we have written a lot about the crisis, and I think that we have lost the perspective of early childhood, and we have to recover in our stories. And this is the challenge that I am going to take from this.
I've heard a few of you today talk about how hard it is on you to report on the stories that take you into places of adversity and see kids experiencing that. So I'm hoping that we can think more about how to support you in that. And then speaking of support, I've been working very slowly, isolated on my own on a story, on an audio documentary for the last 1.5 years, and I'm feeling less alone. So thank you.
Just like Jane, I feel less alone. Just like Louisa, I have so many questions. I have so much homework to do when I come back home. That's on my mind right now. I have so much to know more. Now I have the guidelines to know what to look for.
I was struck by the importance of the 0 to 3 age range. I feel like most of the reporting I've done has focused on preschool age or elementary school, and so this is like this huge area that I've been ignoring, and I want to dive further into that.
Thank you. I mean, it was, I learned a lot from this 4-day workshop because for the countries that we are broadcasting for, Afghanistan and Pakistan, there is no concept of ECD so far. So it will be quite beneficial for me personally to practice all these, and secondly, to inform or to aware the public there through our radio and websites, the millions of people who are listening to us, that how important it is to take care of the children below than 5 years of age, because learning doesn't begin at school, it begins at birth. And secondly, the early experiences shape the brain development as well. And the other important aspect that I got from the training was how to interview the children who are in trauma or who have been through the conflicts or who have seen the violence or have become the victims of violence. So this was an outcome, a good. Thank you.
It was very helpful for me, especially because I work in an entertainment morning talk show, and I was wondering that it would be difficult to bring everything, all this knowledge to my reality. But now I could find there is a way, and I have to do it to bring early childhood daily to my show. So it will be very nice to come back to my country and try to do it daily, weekly, and bring these issues in a better way.
So the children I interview have either been raped or incarcerated or placed in solitary confinement or undergone some other sort of trauma. And so I think it's been helpful to hear from other people who also interview children in those kinds of circumstances and who have to grapple with the same ethical issues, and then who also, in my last time at the DART Center, I felt less alone knowing that journalists get traumatized by doing this kind of work. So I guess it's, I mean, nice is not the right word, but nice to be in a room with people who do similar work. And I guess just, you know, I've started thinking more about other story ideas. The struggle for me is like access to data. So I'm glad to also have resources to help with that.
Hi there, I was just a guest today, very happy to have come. And I'm a music journalist, and now I realize that I can also incorporate ECD into my music reporting. Very happy to talk about the childhoods of my favorite musicians, so that's a new idea for me.
Well, for me, I can connect with what Jane was said about feeling less alone, and also all the questions and comments that I heard from you guys, it was very important to reflect on how us as a foundation in Brazil, we can offer support in more effective ways to journalists and more innovative ways. Also to see how this moments, these encounters where we are together as a community, we can exchange ideas. And I think it was really due to the provocative agenda that was put together so carefully by the DART Center, and I'm very thankful for that as well, which was like a unique opportunity to have so many important specialists from the sciences, from interventions, and from journalism to talk to us here. So it has been a very packed agenda, but I really bring so much in my mind, and it feels very good. Thank you.
I made a joke recently with Jack. I said after he made the announcement, I said, well, if journalism ends, maybe you can get a life with airports. And sometimes when I look at the readers and at the response journalism is giving to society, I feel very bad at not knowing the role of journalism in our society. So I think being here was like a 4-day session of acupuncture. For that, like activating some spots, different spots in my brain, in my body. You know, that's an image I liked sometimes to try to feel better, and mainly to talk about intervention. I like the way you Americans measure interventions and deal with it. So it's important also to look at the problems, not like, well, the problem is big, always is big problems, but when you look at interventions in these measurable ways, you can always find some parts of the problem that you can solve. So that was very, very fine for me.
I think the power, the word that kind of it's power. You know, I'm feeling empowered by all the informations I got here, and I'm feeling more excited to make my documentary, which is very related to early child development. And I'm very impressed by all the journalists here. So I think it's a very strong network, and I'm feeling comfortable to share questions. And I think we have a lot of differences here, and each country has its particularities. But I think you have more things in common than differences. So and I believe that we can make change.
I was happy to meet all of you, and I learned a little bit from each one in this room. For me, the most shocking thing was to literally see the impact of neglect in children's brain. And today, the presentation about solutions journalism was like a breath of fresh air. I thought that was really like people said, it's just good journalism, but if you put a name to it and you talk about the concept, it makes you practice more.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I will try to implement solution journalism and everyday daily news. I always think about it when I have to do the steps there in the daily news, which is quite hard. But anyway, I really appreciated this panel. It was really, well, powerful for me particularly. Also interviewing techniques with children. And I totally agree with Kayo in the sense that here you have more, yeah, we can do it instead of the Germans. I don't want to talk bad about Germans, but they are more skeptical, and I feel here, yes, we can change, and there is always like, okay, we can change, but I'm joking, but well, I'm feeling empowered.
I think the biggest learning was that whatever I used to think that it's my experience, I have unlearned everything. And secondly, I can say that the problem remains the same. It's country to country, it's almost the same. But this one workshop for the last 3-4 days, it has made us more sensitive, more sympathetic, because problem remains the same, but it's all about the solution lies in how you approach at it, how you look at it. And this one workshop has made all that difference as far as I am concerned. But I think that we need, if we want to take it to the next level, if you really want to see some positive outcome, so we need to keep engaging with you. If according to me, your role should be like, editor for at least 1 year, where you are the bouncing, board for us. You are generating, we are giving you the ideas, and we are working on it. We are submitting the stories and whatever video which we are making. I have certain ideas which I will be writing to you separately, and it won't require any fund. And then you will see that within an year or so, the real positive, impact which you really want to make, whatever, lectures we have got. For that, we really need at least an year of engagement with you. That's all I want to say.
Okay.
So a few things. A very specific point, Esther, I loved your presentation on data. I feel like in every beat, if we could just pass to each other a list of fabulous resources. At the New York Times, we never did this. I don't know, maybe they do it now. But it feels like there used to be nobility in building up your own sources and building up your own kind of knowledge, and that's like a total waste of time. So I would highly recommend this Google Doc idea that I already floated, and I will start it. And put in, I think we have a document with everyone from here, but I think if we just, or a Google spreadsheet, I think if we just start with a list of experts so that everybody has that at their fingertips, I think just having tools in the moment you need them is super helpful. And I have a lot of names that I can add to that list, and I'm very happy to do it. So I would love to do that. And I love the idea of a collaborative project, and I think Quartz would be a really good home for it. I mean, I'm sure we all think we have a good home for it, but citizen journalism, I think, is very powerful, and kids are doing this in schools now. I think we could really pioneer something unique around a topic, and it could be prisons, it could be what motherhood looks like around the world, it could be what support for motherhood looks like around the world, but we could do something kind of cool that's never been done before. get out. We talk about silos. Let's get out of the silos of our own organizations, right? And some people, I know some organizations will be more down with that than others, but let's try it. What the hell? And I'm also just super impressed by all of you. I mean, I'm so happy to see this is a subject that so many people are caring about. So, yay.
Yeah.
Who am I? So I actually studied psychology and neuroscience like a decade ago, and then I studied journalism. So I'm actually just feeling really validated right now that that being a nerd is cool. So yeah, like Jenny, I feel I'm really just so happy that this is becoming a thing. It's not just some niche thing and that nerds do. That it's becoming more mainstream. So yeah, but definitely it's cool that so many of you guys are kind of going to cover this stuff, and definitely I will as well. This whole workshop has given me a lot of ideas and lots of questions as well. But I think the main thing that I'm going to do is sort of evangelize to my newsroom and just share, kind of talk about this as much as possible, and try to get other reporters and my colleagues to make it a priority as well. That's kind of my takeaway. So.
Well, I'm grateful for all conference. I have so much to read, to learn. This is only an open door. And I have new ideas to documentary about childhood in Ecuador. That is very important. I think we have to give a voice to the children in Ecuador. I also support the Irene idea to do a work together that is on the web, for example, and also can be a tool. I think it can be a tool, for example, for teachers or people around children. After of this workshop, I think I would like to try to, change something, al menos en mi país. Thank you.
Okay, just want to say thank you so much to, Bruce, to Dart Center for let me come again to have this amazing experience, last year, because I have the baby and the husband in here. I didn't have the possibility to talk to many of the other journalists, and I can see that this is like a really amazing and I think more active group. This idea of the ECD, like Panama Papers, I think it is kind of amazing. I mean, I'll be so happy to be part of it. And yes, I think that everybody that is reporting on childhood, I think we should feel really, really proud of the work that we do. There is so many things happening today in the world, and taking this beat, I think that it is so, so important. So, I don't know, just thank you. Thank you for laughing at my jokes and say that my presentation was good. I was like very insecure. I mean, I was in the same table with Jenny and James, I was like, well, me from Chile, who cares? So yeah, thank you. And I'm really waiting for read and hear and watch all your stories. Please share everything. We did it the last year. You should definitely try, Ariel knows, we have another Facebook group of the former group from last year, and I know there are so many stories, especially from some countries. They have run a lot of stories. I remember India and Brazil. You can watch what your colleagues from the same country have done, and that could give you some perspective. So thank you so much.
I really enjoyed the past few days as much as I come here both as a funder and to share some ECD perspective. I've learned so much from all of you, the questions you're asking, the types of insights that you're looking for. I'm going to bring it back and also work within the foundation to think about how are we putting out information, how are we putting out policy briefs or opinion pieces or blogs even on the topics around ECD, and how we're messaging them so that it's accessible essentially for the general public and for all of you to read. On another note, I think I feel really glad that we are working with DART, and I really want to commend Bruce and Karen, Kate, and Ariel for the work that you've put into this session. I think it was fantastic, and I'm just so glad that I could be here. even though it means that some of my colleagues couldn't be here. And in that sense, I've learned a lot from this. And I want to thank all of you for the hard work and hours that you've put into planning this. And I'm looking forward to reading the ECD Panama Papers that's coming out from here.
And now you're all on the spot.
And-
And now it's my turn to do a few thanks. First of all, again, to our funders, to Lily's and Bernard Van Leer, and to Jacobs, and to Vigidal Foundation. This is a unique transnational collaboration. I'm not aware of any other journalism education and training effort that's quite so global in its funding scope. And also, again, I said this on the first day, but this is a big risk for these funders. It is stepping way outside their usual comfort zone to trust a gnarly room of pain-in-the-ass journalists. And hats off to you. I think you accomplished a lot, and thank you guys for that. Also, I do have to thank the Dart Center staff. The intellectual architecture of this week, the lion's share of it is thanks to Kate Black, who has been working her ass off for the last year on this. And also to Ariel, as well as Kelly and Alana, who are not here, and to Karen, who's been a central part of the planning of this from the beginning as well. Thank you all. This is really marvelous. Coming out of here, my thought is finding more ways of keeping you guys connected and engaged. The Facebook group does exist. The idea of the shared tip sheet and spreadsheet, that's a living document, is a wonderful idea. The idea of cross-border collaborations is a thrilling idea. We need to figure out ways of keeping you all very busy people, because you're all going to go home to your work, your editors, your families, your everybody else. But I think the idea that this is work that we don't do alone, and these are innovations and problems in journalism that we don't solve alone, I think that's very important. Tanya, thank you. Senior fellow, thank you. So that certainly is something that's on my mind as we leave here. I also wanted to say something a little more probably personal about my own agenda for this. At the beginning, taking on early childhood development might seem a little bit of a stretch for the Dart Center. I mean, we focus on reporting about violence and its aftermath, and while the connection is there, it can seem a little bit of a stretch. But as we look at what are clearly the multi-generational legacies of trauma and adversity, when we look at the data that was so overwhelming that Chuck and everybody else presented on everything from epigenetics to lifelong social issues and multi-generational legacies, the flip side is also true. And it's important to remember this, the multi-generational legacies of resilience, of justice, of equity, the benefits of those investments in ECD and the effectiveness of ECD. That, to me, comes very close to my own heart. In a certain sense, this is a journalistic investment in peacemaking, not in the political realm with politicians talking to one another, but in the deep intervention in the sources of inequity and violence and dysfunction within our own countries and within our own societies. Coming at a moment when our own profession is under attack and when the most powerless people in so many of our nations are becoming even more powerless, it seems especially important, and an entire exercise in solutions journalism of a certain type, to be undertaking this work. So going forward, I would also, what I feel is deeply refreshed in my own sense of mission and purpose as a journalist myself, and in our work here at the Dart Center. And if we've contributed a little bit to refreshing your own sense of mission and purpose, I think we've done an okay job for the weekend. So let's just go forward and commit journalism, okay? Thank you all.